from the targeted theory is that the NMLA and Galactic Mysteries, the NMLA. Private investigators Eric Gunnarsson and Francesca Wolf review the Neo-Marlinist Liberation Army. Gunnarsson: we don't usually get involved with political cases, but it's hard to ignore the largest terrorist attack in history. The NMLA is a radical offshoot of Marlinism, a democratic movement named after the Republic of Akana's original ruler, Marlin Deval. Most are peaceful protester types, but neo-Marlinists want to overthrow the government by permanently removing the imperial family. What nobody knows is how the NMLA went from minor troublemakers to interstellar terrorists. The starport bombings last September came from nowhere, and their assassins have killed many imperial bigwigs including Prince Harold Deval. Smart money was on them being funded by Empire's enemies, but now the NMLA treat the Alliance and Federation as equal targets. Hitting all three superpower capitals was a hugely symbolic gesture, and should have been impossible. How did they bypass security and plant explosives without it? Who the hell are these people? Wolf doesn't have a clue, but we won't stop searching. Wolf, despite my inquiries and some unauthorized stalking, there's no trace of the rumored NMLA bomb. TT-19
Frameshift drive charging.
35. But it did once exist.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Because the Empire captured its occupants. Not that they'll admit it. There is no such place as Serene Harbor, right? Well, I've been to RCRA Sector AFAD 423B and seen it myself. It's bleak, hope-crushing, and yet the NMLA prisoners listed as Theta Group escaped, broken out by what seems like Imperial intelligence double agents. That genuinely scares me. If the NMLA can worm inside the most shadowy security organization in known space, they could be anywhere. And none of us are safe. Medical supplies needed for starport bombing survivors. Pilots Federation alert. Safeguard Interstellar requires deliveries of medicines to treat casualties from the NMLA's recent terrorist attack. The humanitarian aid organization is helping to coordinate relief efforts for the starports in the Alliance, Empire and Federation that were bombed last week. CEO Noel Beaumont announced, hundreds of thousands of civilians still require urgent medical attention after being evacuated from the damaged stations. Many have severe caustic burns inflicted by the corrosive enzyme payload of the explosives. We have already exhausted the majority of supplies in nearby systems. To reinforce overstretched health services, we request shipments of basic medicines and advanced medicines. These can be delivered to 3 starports being used as staging areas: Krylov Ring in the Hebo system, Mackenzie Relay in the Samir system, and Davis Terminal in the Duanta system. Safeguard Interstellar has partnered with 3 local factions, Paris Ring Brewery, Lavigny's Legion, and the Duanta Gold Creative Corp, to reward pilots and distribute the medicines within each superpower. Pilots can provide further help by directly delivering repair materials to damaged starports in the Akana, Avion, Eotiensis, Gateway, Kamatenu, Lathe, Nanoma, and Rhea systems. Qingjiao Station in the Sol system remains an active disaster zone. still requiring evacuation. Anti-NMLA intelligence unit formed. The Alliance, Empire and Federation have created a centralized agency dedicated to investigating and eliminating the NMLA paramilitary group. The new affiliated Counter-Terrorism Unit, or ACT, is a direct result of the Cornelius-Lasky Convention, which was signed at the Galactic Summit. This treaty requires the superpowers to share information on any large-scale threats to civilian populations. With a combined death toll rising over 500,000, the recent starport bombings have obtained such status. ACT will be jointly led by the veterans of the Tri-Superpower Task Force that defeated the League of Reparation in 3304, Captain Niam Sutenya of the Imperial Internal Security Service, Inspector Mara Klatt of Alliance Interpol, and Senior Agent Tanya Ramirez of the Federal Intelligence Agency.
Scan detected.
Captain Sutenya gave a brief statement. ACT is an independent organization dedicated to bringing the NMLA to justice. We will draw resources from Alliance, Empire and Federation security forces and elsewhere. However, we foresee the need for even larger numbers of dedicated personnel. Therefore, we have contacted the Pilots Federation for permission to invite independent pilots to gather information for us when necessary. Pilots are advised that civilians still require transportation from damaged starports in the Akanar, Alioth, Eotiensis, Gateway, Kamathenyu, Lathe, Nanomum, Rhea and Sol systems. Superpowers respond to Nine Martyrs' attack. Political fallout has been intense after the NMLA simultaneously bombed 9 starports in the Alliance, Empire and Federation. The targeted stations are in the Akanar, Alioth, Eotiensis, Gateway, Kamathenyu, Lathe, Nanomum, Rhea and Sol systems. These were referred to by NMLA propaganda as the 9 Martyrs, a reference to the attack against Kepler Orbital last November. Security, using communication protocols recently established at the Galactic Summit. However, mainstream media has also reported on internal political tensions. The Imperial Herald, Senator Patrios proposed that all known Marlinists be arrested immediately as NMLA collaborators. He received a direct rebuke from Chancellor Blaine, who said, "Her Majesty views your blunt tactics as having been counterproductive and requires more creative solutions." The Federal Times, President Hudson opened Congress with a minute's silence to honor VP Brad Mitchell and other deceased cabinet members. He then directly blamed Shadow President Winters for their deaths, claiming, "You invited terrorists with your virtue signaling aid program for refugees." The Alliance Tribune. The Assembly broadly welcomed Prime Minister Mahone's call for unity against NMLA and praised his efforts on the Syrian treaty despite it remaining unsigned. But there was also support for Councillor Kane's viewpoint. Our entry fee for the Galactic Summit was hundreds of thousands of lives. Starport bombing casualties include the Federal Vice President. Vice President Brad Mitchell and a number of federal cabinet members have been killed in a recent terrorist attack on a starport
Frameshift drive charging.
orbiting Earth. The NMLA planned caustic enzyme explosives at Qingzhou Station, where a government meeting was taking place. The VP and cabinet members were confirmed to be among tens of thousands of casualties. 8 other starports across all 3 superpowers were simultaneously bombed. President Zachary Hudson, who was attending the Galactic Summit during the attack, made this statement: "This atrocity is nothing less than a declaration of war, and we will respond accordingly. For now, we've
Frameshift drive charging.
mourn the loss of my close friend Brad Mitchell and other heroes of the Federation. I will personally appoint replacements to their positions soon. The Federation has directly accused the Empire of being responsible
3, 2, 1.
by allowing neo-Marlinist bomb makers to escape from the secret prison facility. The Imperial Senate reiterated that Serene Harbor does not exist and is part of a federal disinformation campaign. Followers of Marlinism have also received much public criticism. The Marlinist colonies have repeatedly stressed that they do not support the
Fuel scooping.
NMLA and are
Fuel field disengaged.
connected to the attacks. Independent pilots have been asked to assist rescue and repair operations in the Akana, Alioth, Eotienses, Gateway, Kamathenyu, Lave, Nanomum, Rhea and Sol systems. Galactic Summit cancelled. NMLA attacks superpowers. The conference in the Sirius system has ended prematurely after terrorist bombings against 9 starports across the Alliance, Empire and Federation. Sirius Corporation confirmed that the cancellation was due to fears that Patterson Enterprise Station may be the next target. All scheduled business, including finalizing the Sirius Treaty, has been halted. The delegations are returning to their home systems under high security. Temporary permits for the Sirius system will remain in place for 1 week. Pilots who contributed to the security and trade initiatives held in partnership with the Empire can collect their rewards at the Spirit of Laylaps. Core Dynamics, Gutamaya and Lakon Spaceways will continue to offer a 10% discount on all their ships for 1 more week. The Neo-Marlinist Liberation Army has claimed responsibility for the simultaneous attacks in 9 systems, including superpower capitals Akana, Alioth and Sol. The following message was broadcast on NMLA propaganda channels. I no longer have a name, nor a family, nor a future, each taken by the Empire. Now all I have is the dehumanizing number printed on my uniform in their torture chambers. Now all
Frameshift drive charging.
I am is Theta 7. The Alliance and Federation's rulers have revealed themselves as imperialist supporters of the Duval dynasty, which has crushed our ideals for 1,000 years. Peoples of the galaxy.
4, 3, 2, 1. Action detected.
And regain your power. Media news feeds are detailing the impact and implications of the attacks. There is speculation that NMLA activists were concealed among Marlinist refugees that fled to Alliance and Federation space to escape Imperial persecution. The Marlinist Parliament has officially stated it has no connection to Neo-Marlinist extremists, and that it will cooperate with security and emergency services during this crisis. 9 starports hit by terrorist bombings. Pilots Federation alert. Explosions have struck starports across the Alliance, Empire and Federation in a coordinated bombing attack by the NMLA. The capital systems of all 3 superpowers, Akana, Alioth and Sol, have been targeted by the terrorists, as well as 6 other high-population systems. Precise casualty numbers are unavailable, but several 100,000 killed with many more injured. There are urgent calls for independent pilots to rescue survivors and support repair operations at all 9 locations. Dawes Hub in the Akana system, Donaldson in the Alioth system, Dublin Citadel in the Gateway system, Han Gateway in the Nanomum system, Ito Orbital in the Rhea system, Lathe Station in the Lathe system, Lichinjiao in the Sol system, Parkinson Dock in the Eotienses system, Shajan Market in the Kamathenyu system. The explosive damage to each station is consistent with corrosive enzyme weapons previously used by the NMLA. This has triggered automated systems designed to respond to Thargoid assaults. The Alliance Defense Force, Federal Navy and Imperial Navy are on full alert. Other military and security forces across the core systems are preparing for possible further attacks. The Galactic Summit has been temporarily suspended while Alliance, Empire and Federation leaders respond to the emergency. A full lockdown is in effect in the Sirius system, where the scheduled bounty hunting and trade initiatives have been cancelled. Galactic Mysteries. The Adamastor. Eric Gunnarsson and Francesca Wolf, 2 detectives from the Wall Glass Investigations Agency, examine the background of the Adamastor megaship. Gunnarsson. When Wolf and I started this project, we knew this case would come first. We're both protégés of Benjamin Chester, creator of the Wall Glass Archive. He retired years ago, but that old spark kicked in when a ghost ship turned up on his doorstep. The Adamastor is a 200-year-old derelict that drifted into the Chukchan system on autopilot. It's still there, with the Alliance Salvage Guild poking through its guts. Chester investigated its owners, a super-secretive company called Azimuth Biochemicals. We don't know what they were searching for, but what they found was possibly the first recorded Thargoid encounter. I've since tracked down evidence that the Adamastor had a sister ship, the Hesperus, which in 3113 was sent to somewhere. Neither ship returned, but we only know what happened on the Adamastor mission. Of course, Wolf had to go see that with her own eyes. Wolf. Muscadark Region PJPB61 is a busy system nowadays, but was unexplored when Professor Carver's survey team were there. Listening to their logs from 2 centuries ago while examining the research base was chilling. Ghost voices from a ghost ship. There was evidence of blast scars, but I've seen enough battlefields to know what exchanged gunfire looks like. Azimuth's
Incoming message.
mercenaries weren't just firing at Thargoids, but at someone who shot back with laser rifle.
Hull integrity compromised.
Gamarsin tells me Azimuth was swallowed up by a rival called Pharma Sapien. Did they infiltrate the Adamastor and try to take over? Or did the thing that Carver captured drive everyone insane? This is a seriously cold case, even for us. But maybe one day, more tantalizing clues will emerge. And that's what we live for. Thargoid conflict discussed at the Galactic Summit. Potential solutions to the threat posed by the Thargoid race are being debated at the diplomatic conference in the Sirius system. Political correspondent Conrad Sterling reported for Vox Galactica. As always, the topic of the Thargoids brings division. The Alliance
Frameshift drive charging.
delegation has portrayed the aliens as a Empire and Federation took a more balanced view. Professor Albert Tesro's plea to increase support for Aegis was well received, but many delegates argued that further anti-Xeno breakthroughs were needed to justify additional funding. To this end, Aegis will undertake new research into the Guardians, hoping to discover a technological advantage from that ancient species. Prime Minister Mahone's proposal for strategic cooperation against the Thargoids, known as the Sirius Treaty, is now being examined in detail.
Orbital flight engaged.
Supporters view it as a logical progression from the recently agreed Cornelius-Lasky Convention. There was minor uproar when Archon Delane agreed to be a signatory. Coupled with similar commitments from the Marlinist colonies and other independents, this has brought pressure upon the Empire and Federation to follow suit. If ratified, the Sirius Treaty could be the crowning achievement of the conference. However, putting it into practice will require a huge influx of resources. Decisions are expected before the end of this week. The Declaration of Archon Delane. At the Galactic Summit, the infamous pirate leader Archon Delane has demanded to be accepted as the legitimate leader of a political power. A gap in the schedule allowed him to make an address in the main conference chamber. Most of you see me.
Welcome at this terrestrial port.
Of multiple systems. That must end now. My efforts to build a Kuma nation deserve respect. I am here to declare my sovereignty and take my rightful
Access granted. Arrival on landing pad 05. You are
Place
clear
on
for
the
automated
political
approach,
date.
Commander.
This was immediately dismissed by many delegations. Princess Aisling de Val said this was a barbaric mockery of nobility, while Shadow President Winters asked how much bloodshed the pirates had caused to obtain their power. Archon Delane replied, "Are you all so innocent then? Every civilization begins with barbarism and maintains authority with the threat of violence. None of you can say otherwise. We all wear a crown of bones." There followed intense debate as to whether the Kumo cruise territory could be recognized as a new nation state or was simply a rebranded crime syndicate. There is suspicion that
Landing complete. Clear to disembark.
some of the many criminal vessels detected in the Sirius system are from Delane's pirate fleet. The federal and imperial delegations have offered to remove Archon Delane's retinue, only to be reminded that Sirius Corporation has granted them full diplomatic immunity. The wedding of Hadrian de Val. Imperator Hadrian Augustus de Val, leader of the isolationist group Nova Imperium, has married his consort Astrid Minerva in a closed ceremony. Commander Minerva was a young Imperial pilot who aided Nova Imperium at the Battle of Parisa in 3305 and became a loyal supporter.
Low gravity warning. Docking request granted.
Lady Astrid Minerva de Val. Princess Aisling de Val personally attended her cousin's wedding at a secure location. She referred to it as a precious moment of joy in these bleak times. The Imperial Palace and the Senate have sent congratulatory messages, and the event was covered by mainstream media. Paris News Network. Astrid's well-deserved rise to nobility has made her fellow Parisans very proud. Everyone at PNN is overjoyed for the happy couple.
Frameshift drive charging.
Clear of the board perimeter. Have a safe trip, Commander.
Bacanar. It's an insult to the noble de Val bloodline when some trigger jockey from a gutter system can sink her claws into the Emperor's own nephew. The Imperial Herald.
4, 3, 2, 1. Engage.
Hadrian taking a bride at the age of 20 has surprised many. If he becomes the only de Val to produce heirs, it will place pressure on Emperor Arisa and Princess Aisling, neither of whom have consorts. In related news, Nova Imperium vessels are participating in the current conflict against the neo-Marlinists of Madrid. Head of Security, is liaising with the IISS on anti-terrorism intelligence.
Frameshift drive charging.
Galactic Mysteries, Generation Ships. Anarsin and Francesco
4, 3, 2, 1.
will investigate the abandoned relics of spacefaring communities from the early years of colonization. Wolf. Generation ships are essentially mobile cities designed to carry expanding populations and are always an impressive sight. But there's one I keep returning to, the Thetis, orbiting the Furtum 6A. Listening to its logs always chills my blood. They describe how a whispered phrase from an uninhabited planet somehow caused over 17,000 people to slaughter each other. Nobody knows if it was mass hysteria, psychological stress from decades in space, or something else. So many visits to the Thetis, and I still can't work up the nerve to play its final log entry. I've been warned that I won't be the same afterwards. Gunarsin. Before hyperdrives, generation ships were a viable way to colonize distant star systems. Millions of people lived out their whole lives within self-contained societies, so their descendants might walk upon new worlds. The tragedy is that many of these pioneering megaships vanished entirely, never reaching their destinations. But some were rediscovered, usually because of listening posts intercepting their ancient broadcasts. There are various reasons why these expeditions failed. The Lazarus, now orbiting Viridnir 6, suffered mechanical breakdowns, whereas the Pleione, in the Hes-Ur system, had a population that only produced male babies. Most disturbing are those where the crew descended into barbarism, like the Artemis at New Cassiopeia C1 and the Demeter in the Misuchi system. Along with Wolf's favorite, if that's the right word, these stand as horrific monuments to our darker natures. Lost generation ships rarely carry survivors, but that was the case with the Golconda, whose people now occupy an outpost on Epaniclis B3. So perhaps more living relics are still adrift in the void, waiting to complete centuries-long missions. Empire attacks Neo-Marlinist faction. Pilots Federation
Landing gear deployed.
Conflict has erupted between the Epsilon Phonarchis Empire Group and the
Colonia.
We're in a tight spot. Critical teams have
Contact. Dispatching ground crew.
what without even being asked. That's what people do. Didn't hide that the whole idea was flat out crazy, of course. That just made them more determined.
Jacques, owner of Jacques Station. Colonia lies some 22,000 light-years from the core systems and was the first system in the Colonia Nebula to be settled by humanity. The circumstances of Colonia's founding are highly unusual. The system was colonized as a result of the spontaneous actions of independent pilots, rather than through a formal expansion program. The colonization of Colonia began with an accident involving Jacques.
Bienvenue, Commandant. Je suis Amélie.
Ich grüße Sie, Kommandant. Dies ist Gerhard. Ihr
A jump-capable orbit starport. In May 3302, the station executed a long-distance
Frameshift-Antrieb wird aufgeladen.
jump to beam point, but when it failed...
4, 3, 2, 1. Strom.
To reach its destination, it was feared lost. In June 3302, an independent pilot discovered Jacques Station in the EL-PRU RST D394 system, suffering from technical issues and effectively stranded. The galactic community reacted swiftly, launching an independent supply drive to restore the starport to functionality. The relief effort soon exceeded its original objective, and many of those involved began to see the distant system as a chance to establish a new community, far from the wearisome conflicts and entrenched viewpoints of the core systems. Talk of a permanent colony went from light-hearted speculation to serious planning. In September 3302, EL-PRU RST D394 was formally renamed. Settlement was constructed on the surface of Colonia 2A. An influx of migrants boosted the system's population, aided financially by the Colonia Council, the region's new governing body, and materially by independent pilots. Colonia is widely viewed as a monument to community spirit and human ingenuity, as well as being the first step into a previously uninhabited region of space. Colonia's population is still small, but the region is undergoing continuous expansion and attracting attention from both enterprising corporations and optimistic migrants. To date, Colonia has remained untroubled by the strife that often plagues the core systems, earning it a reputation as a sanctuary. But it remains to be seen if this nascent community will thrive in isolation or be engulfed by political and corporate forces. The Alliance. History. Alioth was colonized. The crucible in which the Alliance was forged was Alioth, a system so rich in gas and mineral resources that early surveyors considered it a stellar El Dorado. When the Federation established its first colony on Alioth 5b in 2452, they gave the planet the less grandiose name of Fruitcake, as mineral deposits lay in the loamy soils as abundantly as raisins in cake. Later, commentators would reflect, bitterly, that the world was well named because everyone wanted a piece. A conflict over mining rights drew in the superpowers. Alioth's prosperity soon attracted corporations eager to support the developing system in exchange for a share of the profits. A dispute over rights quickly escalated into an armed conflict, prompting the Empire to dispatch a military force, ostensibly for the colonists' protection. The Federation also sent ships, but theirs were a response to the corporation's plea for aid. Unable to directly engage the Federal ships without sparking a war, the Empire covertly encouraged the Alioth colonists to renounce the Federation and accept Imperial protection, thus freeing the Empire to engage with the occupying Federal forces in sympathy with the will of the people. This marked the first of many incidents in which the people of Alioth were used to advance the agenda of another power. Federation-sponsored insurrection. In 2530, the Federation set out to undermine Imperial control of Alioth by exploiting local resentment of the governor. They covertly supported acts of protest and petty vandalism. Then, when the inevitable Imperial crackdown followed, stoked the fires of social unrest. A terrorist movement called the Cakers emerged, and the atrocities escalated. The years that followed saw a protracted and degrading series of proxy wars and cynical propaganda campaigns as the federal, imperial, and corporate powers all contended for Alioth. The system made an abortive attempt to establish its independence in 2617, resulting in a short-lived cooperation between the Empire and the Federation, neither of which were willing to allow this. The Revolution. In the early 4th millennium, both the Federation and the Empire had a presence in the Alioth system. Fruitcake, now known as Gordonwood, was a federal protectorate, while the Empire had earlier conducted terraforming experiments on the world of New California and also held gas mining platforms.
Roger. Tally present start. Fighter is clear of the mothership.
System. The federal corporations supplying New California had raised the prices of their goods several times in the previous years. Now they imposed yet another price hike, the planet's inhabitants. In the insurrection that followed, rebels commandeered any available ships and headed out to the gas mining platforms, where they attacked the outpost's corporate employees. Alarmed, the Empire and the Federation dispatched ships to put down the rebellion, but were beaten back by a hastily assembled force made up of fighters from Alioth and, crucially, volunteers from nearby independent systems. Neither the Empire nor the Federation were able to gain a foothold, and eventually both forces had to withdraw. The Empire faced too many logistical problems fighting so far from home, while the Federation's efforts were undermined by public sympathy for the rebels. An alliance was brokered. The victory in Alioth had proven that independent systems working together could hold their own against the superpowers. It fell to pilot Mick Turner and scientist Meredith Argent to ride the wave of public spirit and propose a permanent alliance, under whose aegis independent systems could enjoy freedom from imperial and federal interference. The alliance was founded in 3230, and in the next 2 decades, it expanded its membership to more than 20 systems, some defecting from the Federation and the Empire, others pledging as independents. The Alliance. Society. Many worlds, few rules, no overlords. The Alliance's Articles of Membership are designed to unite the member systems with strong, straightforward bonds that allow as much self-determination as possible. Membership guarantees mutual prosperity through guaranteed free trade and security through the Alliance Defense Force, while leaving much of the business of government to the individual members. The Alliance Assembly acts as a central arbitration committee, helping to settle disputes between member systems. It also oversees formal arrangements between members, such as treaties, research goals, and mutually agreed policies. As no one system can be allowed to carry more weight than another, the Assembly frequently finds itself bogged down in endless back-and-forth negotiations. Getting them to agree on anything is a task often compared to herding linglangs, notoriously ill-tempered carnivores from the Achenar system. A body of civil servants who remain uninvolved in politics handle most of the day-to-day administrative work that enables the Alliance to function. Conditional autonomy for member systems. Alliance members are required to subscribe to and
Roger that. Ready when you are, Commander. Roger that, Commander. Moving to engage.
rights, and to have a democratically elected government. Citizens of any member state have a right of freedom of movement and residence within any other member state. Furthermore, all member systems are obliged to give immediate military assistance to any fellow member when necessary. The Alliance. Culture and values. Cooperation, mutual aid, tolerance, and respect. The values that bind the Alliance systems also hold true on an interpersonal level. Just as the different worlds of the Alliance formally recognize one another's legitimacy and value, individuals are generally reluctant to show prejudice against others, and will band together to help those in genuine need. Diversity is strength. Members of the Alliance are not obliged to conform to what they consider the corporate saturation of federal culture or the status-obsessed posturing of the Imperials. Individual systems are encouraged to preserve and celebrate their own cultural identities. This approach results in a rich variety of artistic, literary, and dramatic output. Free to speak, free to protest.
They're trying to escape, Commander.
One curious cultural constant across the Alliance systems is the way the citizens indulge their freedom to complain. They can criticize their governments without fearing repression, and they frequently do so. Previous experience of exploitation has left many citizens cynical, but possessed of a certain modern humor and a willingness to take Colonia.
That's what people do. Didn't have the whole idea was rather crazy, of course. That just made them more determined.
Owner of Jack Station. Colonia lies some 22,000 core systems, and was the first system in the Colonia Nebula to imitate. The circumstances of Colonia's founding are highly unusual. Of independent pilots, rather than through a formal expansion program. The colonization of Colonia began with an accident involving Jack Station, a jump-capable Orbis starport. In May 3302, the station executed a long-distance jump to Beagle Point, but when it failed to reach its destination, it was feared lost. In June 3302, an independent pilot discovered Jack's
Eingehende Nachricht.
Roger that, Commander. Moving to engage. Copy that, Commander. Engaging enemy now.